Now.
Yes.
So I had been asked to share my experience with ZyMot, and I hope my experience is a very reflective of real world, wherein I, as a user, got interested in the device, and without having the constraints or the formality of having to conduct a study in a selected patient population, I just decided to embark on it, ordering some ZyMots and using it in the lab just without any previous experience. So the flexibility to do so might have proposed some limitations on the experience that I'm sharing. It has been a relatively very short experience, perhaps 3 to 4 months only. So when I got a message 2 weeks ago that I was to share my experience regarding ZyMot, I was at that time, perhaps I did not think too much into it, but now I realize that I'm not prepared to share the experience with regards to data and numbers, because those cases have been scattered sporadically, as you would for your patients who have ongoing stimulations and pickups. So the data is very short, the experience is very short. We are having a lack of a study design. We haven't categorized our patients into whether they have previously failed IVF cycles, they have high DFI, recurrent implantation failures. We haven't categorized, randomized our patients, or we haven't randomized sibling oocytes from patients, because to be very honest, when I say that this is very reflective of real life scenarios, we really, I mean, outside of a study design wherein you're wanting to study and publish or present at one of the esteemed conferences, you won't have randomization for at least semen processing going on. So we haven't randomized either our patients or oocytes. So there's no direct comparison to the conventional methods of sperm processing. Again, this might be a bias because one of the most critical bias of this experience would be the introduction of a new media. We were very happily using one particular media which got withdrawn from the market, and this has come at a time where we have introduced ZyMot, but at the same time we are struggling with newer medias. And I think a few of us in the audience would also be facing the same issues with experimenting with different medias, particularly in January and February. So what I'll be talking about will be just laboratory outcomes and clinical outcomes to implantation, and that too not for a lot of patients, because most of these embryos found out of either the control or the microfluidic arms are still in cryo repository. And then we have used the ZyMot in patients irrespective of sperm DFI. So it's an unselected patient population, but we'll see that there are studies which have shown, which have in the exact same manner applied ZyMot to unselected patient population, and we'll see what data they have to show. So when I say we have very short data, we had 48 consenting couples who had at least 6 OCCs at retrieval. And let this not be a deterrent to applying ZyMot. There should be no reason for applying a microfluidic sorting device to patients who have lower oocyte numbers, who have a diminished ovarian response. But we wanted previous publications, and we wanted to see their inclusion and exclusion criteria. And we found that more often than not, almost all of the studies did not apply ZyMot or microfluidic separation device against the controls with lower oocyte retrieve. And then we, as I said, we used the microfluidic device irrespective of sperm DFI. This video is perhaps going to take a lot of burden from Ekta, who still is going to demonstrate it after the end of the panel. And this is a 2-minute long video, the time it takes to cook Maggie. So it has incorporated the pre-incubation and post-incubation parts. And it's as simple as one of the ads of Hero Honda that used to go like, fill it, shut it, and forget it. This is such a easy way to perform your sperm processing that I, who used to do all my sperm processing, whether it is sperm up or density gradient, myself, and not leave it to a junior, I'm comfortable delegating, subdelegating this to somebody else, because there is just no way that, of course, there are ways to screw it up, but there are very less chances of messing this up. So what you do is you set up your ZyMot device, you unpack it, you put it in a 100 dish. That's how I do it. We have liquefied, and this is a video from today. I'm very sorry, this is a last moment preparatory video. So this is a video from today's sample, and you just take your 1 ml, you require just the semen sample, the ZyMot device, 100 dish, and 3 1 ml tuberculin syringes. So take about 0.85 ml of liquefied semen sample. Make sure, like Dr. Mangoli said, that there should be no air bubbles, and any air bubble between the column of the semen sample and the plunger, make sure that you don't expunge it till the very end. Don't introduce any bubbles at the end of the column of the liquefied semen sample, and you gently push it in the inlet. So the ZyMot differs from the previously used microfluidic devices that it is flow-free. You don't have columns of media which are running in tangent with the liquefied semen sample, and the separation is two-tier, in the sense that you have first degree of separation wherein the liquid semen sample is going from the various microfluidic channels, and then there's a swim up separation going on. And this is at the once you've done that, wherein you have just injected your liquefied semen sample, the second step is to take 0.75 ml of media and layer it over the membrane. So again, don't introduce any bubbles, and we usually use mops. But in case you're wanting to do conventional insemination, use your bicarbonate buffer media and then put your ZyMot, the 100 dish, in your CO2 incubator. Very important, because we initially, when we did not do that and used for conventional insemination, we exactly like Dr. Vijay, how you mentioned that the sperm survival with ZyMot was lesser. We used to find a lot of immotile sperms at the end of 24 hours with conventional insemination. So use your bicarbonate buffer media. Let it rest for 30 minutes, and after 30 minutes, get another tuberculin syringe. Make sure that there's no air, and just pull out 0.5 ml of the separate sperm, the yield from the outlet channel, and it's as simple as that. There's nothing to it, and you'll see that for a normozoos spermic sample, just based on the appearance of the yield, you can make out that it is going to contain adequate spermatozoa. So this is 0.5 ml. That is enough for conventional insemination. And if we are to look at the sample under magnification, this is at 40x. This is at 20 into 200x. So this is exactly what Dr. Vijay Mangoli sir meant, that the motility is just unexplainable. You can, even with swim-up samples, wherein we get 90 to 95% highly motile, rapidly progressive spermatozoa, this far exceeds that. You will not find any immotile spermatozoa with the normozoos spermic samples. So it was very tough to present data in a manner wherein we could have some conclusive results out of that, in the sense that we started with 48 patients with mean maternal age of 34 plus minus 3 and paternal age of 36, versus 480 M2 oocytes from 32 patients who were controls, wherein we used standard conventional methods of sperm processing, either swim up or density gradient. And this is not the data for all of them, because we had to separate out. So first we are talking about the laboratory outcomes. So we'll see that there's a trend towards increased rates of fertilization, good quality embryos, K5 utilizable blastocyst rates, and we were very strict about our good quality, the definition of good quality embryos on day 3 and day 5. Literature uses good quality on day 3 as anything more than 6 cells and less than 25% fragmentation. We used as 7 cells and less than 10% fragmentation. Similarly, for day 5 good blastocyst rate, we did not use a conventional 4BB that has been used in literature. Ours was 4AA, 4AB, or 4BA. So we did not consider 4BB or any grades of 3AB, 3BA, and 3BB in expansion. So that's why the rates might seem a little lesser to you, but we have been very strict about our morphology scoring. Then you'll see that there's a dropout at numbers. We started with 48 patients in the ZyMot arm and 32 patients in the control arm, but we lost a lot of them. When I say we lost, we have excluded the patients wherein we did double embryo transfer, because in such a short time to have meaningful inferences, I thought it would be better that we included patients only with elective single embryo transfers. And we are looking at data only for about 3 months. So we found that following a single embryo transfer, we have, if you were to do a statistical analysis, which we haven't done, you'll see that perhaps there is no difference in implantation rates, but there's a trend towards significance both in the implantation rates and the higher blastulation and good quality blastocysts. And this is perhaps resonating across the studies, even in selected patient populations, wherein perhaps you don't have increase in clinical outcomes in terms of ongoing pregnancy rates and live birth rates, but you are having more blastocysts to freeze, more blastocysts to biopsy, and higher euploidy. So then we have looked at patients with wherein we did a selection, and we found that the literature is very scattered. We have looked at studies wherein ZyMot versus conventional semen assessment processing parameter methods have been used for selected patient populations of higher DFI. But then there is some literature which shows that apart from increasing higher grade good quality embryos on day 3 and day 5, it is perhaps not increasing the clinical outcomes. This is another, these are all recent studies. These are studies from 2019, 20, 21, 22. And this is again a sibling oocyte study done on 81 patients, swim up versus fertile plus. And then again, no statistical differences between the laboratory outcomes in terms of fertilization rates and blastulation rates. These are the same studies, the clinical outcomes, again, no differences. But of course, we have to be mindful of the very low number of patients enrolled for, and it is tough to conduct this kind of study and have larger numbers at the onset of introduction of a new technology. So again, this was what I was mentioning, that when you're using in an unselected patient population, again, you're perhaps not benefiting in terms of higher fertilization or blast euploidy rate. This is contrary to what the Palermo group has published, wherein they have higher euploidy rate, and which is perhaps understandable with higher blastulation and when you use ZyMot, but the clinical outcomes are not different with the use of microfluidic septation. So again, this is the same study. You are looking at perhaps no differences. So for us, we have perhaps learned that it is one of the cleanest ways of having a fraction of highly motile spermatozoa. And we have had equal rates of fertilization as compared to conventional insemination with swim up versus we use swim up for our normal insemination. And when we use ZyMot, we have similar fertilization. I don't know if I'm allowed to take names, but we have been having only one other microfluidic device in the market, which is probably not available at the moment now. But even though ZyMot comes at over double the cost, but it is providing us with a yield which can be used for conventional insemination and having a double layer of enrichment in the terms of microfluidic and swim up yield. We did, in the very few cases, do morphology analysis of the patients where we use ZyMot post-processing. And since it's not possible to do it in routine workflow, we did not do it anymore after the initial 8 to 10 patients, but we found no differences in the, contrary to the published literature, the morphology of the processed human sample was no different. And this is perhaps understandable because of the pore size, wherein there are some studies wherein some microfluidic devices have used 3 microns, 5 microns, and 8 microns, and the levels of separation and the level of aneuploidy and the level of sperms with the megahertz and excessive residual cytoplasm vary between 3 pore sizes, but we did not find any differences in the morphology. We'll have some more videos wherein we work with extremely dirty samples, wherein you had 20 to 25 million round cells and pus cells. And though I was very skeptical of not using double density for this sample and uh, subjecting it to ZyMot, but we found that there were no concerns following the use of ZyMot for these patients. So, and again, the yield from this, this is the post ZyMot yield, and it is crazy. It's 100% motile. There is not a single immotile spermatozoa, and we have comfortably used it for conventional insemination. This has not been used for ICSI. I would have erred to the side of doing 50-50, but this was a patient with only 7 to 8 oocytes, and we used 100% for conventional insemination, and no concerns of fertilization failure or with such high levels of round cells, we did not have any concerns of contamination, even with a dirty sample like this. Dr. Mangoli sir said that it works well with moderately oligospermic sample. So this is a post ZyMot sample of a raw semen sample having 4 million count, and we were delighted to get this from the ZyMot. So it has tremendously simplified our workflow. It has avoided the need for centrifugation, whether you're doing it once just for swim up or twice for density gradient. And we are looking at a simpler workflow. We are using lesser trials, lesser witnessing, lesser steps, and it can be easily done by any junior embryologist. This is a video from the previously available microfluidic device that we have used, and after a while of using it, it is not cumbersome at all. But initially, it does require you to get acquainted with it, in the sense that you have to establish laminar flow between the column of the media and the column of the liquefied semen sample. And in case there is any turbulence between the two layers, there's a lot of mixing, and you will get a output of a yield that is going to be contaminated by immotile sperms and the round cells and so on. So this is from the Qualis. You have a inlet wherein media is coming in, and you have a liquefied semen sample, and you'll see that highly motile spermatozoa are able to jump across the interface between these two laminar flows and get collected in a separate outlet chamber where you can. But the limitation of this was, apart from getting acquainted with it, you perhaps cannot, I haven't tried it, but you perhaps cannot use it with conventional insemination. Gaurav has used it. Gaurav is in the audience, and I don't know if he has used it with conventional insemination, but we haven't. And anyways, this is not available anymore. So you are having only one microfluidic device as of now in the market. So again, I perhaps have stuck to time, 19 minutes on. And right now, even for people who have started using it, it is very premature to draw meaningful conclusions in the absence of having a study design and selected patient population and randomization. It is a promising tool, especially for selected patient indications like high DFI, recurrent implantation failures, and so on. But a plea to our company friends, the consumable providers, to have it made available so that we can absorb it in the routine workflow without having to pass the cost to the patients, because that's how we would want to pass on the add-ons in IVF to our patients in the absence of current evidence. Once the evidence is established, like vitrification, ICSI, we are happy to charge for it, blastocyst culture. But in the meanwhile, while we are, none of the patients for whom we used ZyMot have been charged for it. So that's how I would want to go ahead with it, so that we can comfortably absorb the costs and integrate in the routine workflow. Again, Dr. Rajiv Ma'am has mentioned that if we use it in conjunction in series with another method of sperm selection, it is perhaps and has in Prabhakar's study tremendously improved the sperm selection. But we have to be very mindful of the time expended as well. It is easier to do in labs where you have multiple hands, multiple people doing somebody's doing sperm processing separately, and somebody denuding, and somebody just sitting on the X-ray. Easier to do, but if somebody is running the show all by himself, it's perhaps a little difficult to incorporate. But yeah, that has been my experience, and I'm very happy, perhaps with improved blast collection and the eased up workflow with ZyMot Multi as of now. So with that, I would like to finish the experience sharing that I have. Any questions, I'm happy to answer.
It's nice, you have made a beginning, and I'm sure you get more and more data. You mentioned about the dirty sample. So by dirty sample, we mean not only debris, there will be bacteria also in that. Now, can this device, separate the bacteria? Because sometimes, when you done the previous cultures and all, you find cultures are negative, and on the day of, IVF, you get the sample and you pair by double density or by this method, and next day you find, the plate is totally contaminated. Now, can this device, under those circumstances, in the dirty sample, remove the bacteria? Because bacteria is smaller than the.
Yes, so the bacteria are very hardy, and I'm pretty sure that they'll be able to pass through the.
In your this dirty sample, you find the bacteria?
No, we did not have.
Culture after 24 hours or 48 hours.
We have a tendency of not discarding the fertilization plate till the end of 5 days and observing it, because we have struggled with contamination prior to 2017-18, and in the interim period between 2019 to late 2022, we switched to 100% XC. It is only after preparing for talks for conventional IVF and so on and so forth, and reducing the cost, because we are expending a lot of energy and time into doing unnecessary XCs for normozoospermic samples, that we have regained our confidence back into conventional IVF. So contamination is our primary concern. But if I were again to have a dirty sample on the day of pickup, I would err on the side of doing a double density NXC. I'll be very honest, because we have had contaminations wherein we thought we will be able to get away with freezing the freezing the 2 PNs on day 1 of contamination, freezing on day 2, and perhaps freezing and thawing later on would get rid of contamination. It is not contamination persists. So I'm pretty sure that the device, the microfluidic pores are so contamination also is from non-motile or motile gram negative. So if it is motile gram negative, I'm pretty sure there is no getting rid of it. Yes. So it is good to err on the side of doing a double density and doing XC for that sample.
Thank you, Pranay. It was because it is beginning, so there are a lot of questions in everybody's mind. You have used it in severe oligospermic samples?
No,
what is your experience?
No, we have used it only for moderately oligo, and that too for the sake of.
Because see, for normozoospermic sample, you will agree. I think you will agree. Whatever you use, there is not much difference.
True.
Where you are actually worried about the samples, like you have shown, or what he was saying, or severely oligospermic samples. Until unless we get a difference from the conventional methods and the ZyMot or the any microfluidic, it may not be very useful in clinical scenarios.
So our hesitancy.
So we have to segregate our patients. Normozoospermic, not much problem, whatever you use. Oligospermic or the severely compromised samples, if we get some data out of experience, then certainly people sitting in the hall, they will be convinced that yes, this is one method which can be used for selected group of patients.
I understand, sir. So perhaps we were a little comfortable doing it for moderately oligospermic, but I'll be very honest, we were not very sure that spending that kind of money, it's a cost prohibitive thing, that you will get anything at all with samples wherein you have 1 million count or 5% motility. So we were a little hesitant because it was not being the study. There was no study design. We are not being funded and we are not drawing any grants. So we do not want to waste one whole fertile ZyMot. But yes, I think.
And second thing, like if your sample you showed that you use 0.85 ml sample because it was normal, so you are not worried about it. But again, in oligospermic sample, the volume is 2 ml, and you are having only few sperms. how you are going to use the device.
So at the end of the, to be pragmatic, at the end of the separation, I'm just looking at those many motile sperms as what we have, the number of oocytes for that day. And even with perhaps 0.85 ml, we'll probably get it. But
So again, the question comes,
We haven't
that
tried.
you will get
We
by
haven't
any
tried.
method.
Yeah.
So how means DFI is one thing which may come into play, but again, DFI is something which is still in the bracket.
True.
Okay, and especially when you are doing XC.
Normal
Not conventional, yeah.
So, I have to listen to Dr. Vijay Mangoli. What he says that he's more happy with it in the oligosperm. Actually, like he said, nomosperm. And he's finding that the recovery is better. Second question, when it's highly diluted, that's the main concern. So with 750, 500 microliters, they're going to have a very diluted. So what he's doing is doing a short spin.
Yeah,
He's concentrating.
I think, but again, those means you will be diluting it with the media.
No, post processing. So whatever we have used, post processing, we're getting 500 microliters. Oligosperm, you have a large volume, 500 microliters with a sperm. So what he does is a short spin, then uses the concentrate, not really a pellet.
not, but it kind of defeats the purpose of doing microfluidics.
That's exactly what I asked. That what's up?
Oligospermic sample, I will not discard any of the sperm before the first thing. So either you make a concentrated before putting it into the ZyMot. That may be one thing. I don't know whether somebody has used that, or post processing. Post processing, again, you are discarding rest of the sample, and maybe that sample might have been given you a good yield.
What is logic is that the pre-processing, they don't want to do it because they are just talking about the
Again, the same thing. Yeah.
The whole idea is you don't want to send it, they don't want to send it to post-processing. So once it has been selected, they found no difference.
I think that
So
eventually,
that's just to concentrate it, so let's find less time searching for this form.
eventually we are going to come around a conclusion wherein we are going to be using it for moderately oligospermic samples or high DFI samples. Exclusion criteria, which the studies mentions, highly oligospermic samples and acinospermic samples will have to be either just centrifuged or.
One thing is simplicity is there. That is without any question. But rest of the thing, I think we need to generate
We have
more data in different
indications,
scenarios.
yes.
And then we need to find out
Which particular subset of patients
subset
is
going
benefiting from.
to give you best outcome.
True, sir.
I think that should be the way forward.
Yeah, this has just been a trial run for us to get acquainted with the workings of it, and we are comfortable with it. Perhaps now we can just focus on patients who actually meet the indications now.
And again, the contamination, what you are saying,
True.
that is, and that's why most of people actually want to exceed just to avoid that.
True, we did as well.
Even in hundreds of cycles, if you are having one contamination for next 6 months, you will not do the
Exactly the same reason. We used to have
Yeah.
one contamination annually, and we 100% sure. So we were having 2016, 17, 18. We shifted completely to XC, and now we have just gotten our confidence back into performing more conventional inseminations. But that too, we do split inseminations.
And second, third thing, cost. Because we were just discussing, I was discussing Balaji also. They have also not started using micro. I told him, I asked him why. Again, the cost.
The benefit has to far outweigh the cost.
So I think that needs to be worked out.
Yeah, the
We
benefit.
have to use in more samples and more cases.
All of us as clinicians and embryologists are already incurring and absorbing a lot of costs, in the sense that previously we used to charge separately for XC, separately for blastocyst culture, vitrification, thawing. I think now it has become an all-encompassing. So for us to absorb any more cost is becoming a little difficult, especially when the benefit is not too much. So yes, a plea out to our